Make a habit of empathy, to recognize ourselves in each other.
Well, I'm Dave Elkins, and I was a professor for 25 years at Pepperdine University in Los Angeles, and now I'm at University of the Rockies in Colorado Springs. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I've been involved in that field for many years. And I'm very interested, and have been for many years, in the subject of empathy. Well, I'd like to start with my own field and sort of area of expertise. Something that I think is really fascinating is that what we have found through research, through many years in the field of clinical psychology, is that empathy is one of the main variables that results in effective therapy. Essentially, if your therapist is not an empathic human being, there's a good chance that your therapy will not help you much. On the other hand, if your therapist is really excellent in terms of empathy, then there's a very good chance that you're going to benefit from going to that person. In the field of psychology, we have sort of three major therapeutic movements through history, from the time of Freud to the present day. And one of these is humanistic existential psychology. Another one is cognitive behavioral psychology. And the other one is the movement that Freud started, psychoanalysis, or more broadly, psychodynamic psychology. And those three fields don't agree on a lot of things. But one of the things all three therapeutic movements agree on is that empathy is extremely important. For example, I'm associated with the humanistic movement and the existential movement, always have been from the beginning. And Carl Rogers, who was a humanistic psychologist and who in two major surveys of all clinical psychologists in the nation, has come out the top psychologist of the 20th century in these surveys. That's how important he was to the field of psychology. Had a major impact on all aspects of therapeutic psychology. And one of the main things that Rogers said was that empathy, and his research of 20 years supported it, is probably the most important element in a therapist's repertoire. Again, if the therapist is empathic, you have a very good chance that you're going to benefit significantly. And if that therapist is not empathic, there's a good chance that you won't. Now, this is not only true of humanistic existential. People who know those fields know that humanistic existential people have talked a lot about empathy through the years, as well as some other interpersonal conditions. But it's also true of the Freudian movement, especially the broader Freudian movement. For example, there's a man that was back at the University of Chicago in the 50s and up through the 80s. He was trained by Freud's daughter. He was analytically trained, went to analysis with Anna Freud, who was Freud's daughter. And he then changed in some ways from traditional psychoanalysis to, and really invented a new way of doing psychotherapy from still a psychodynamic point of view, but it was called self-psychology. And his primary technique, if you want to call it that, was what he called empathic attunement. He thought the only way that damage to the self in the early years of childhood could be repaired was by a therapist who knew how to empathically attune and to really be there for the client. And then in cognitive behavioral therapy, the third movement, which is very heavily technique-oriented. These people rely on their techniques in all their literature and all their research very heavily. But what they also have found in recent years is that the most empathic CBT, cognitive behavioral therapists, are also the most effective CBT therapists. So that's one area that we all agree on, that you've got to be empathic if you're going to help your client.